Not surprisingly, it was Patrick Sniers with the Ford Escort Cosworth who was expected to be the class of the field. He set off at a blinding pace on the stages, but discovered that they were very slippery indeed, and that hampered his progress a little bit on the opening day. Opposition would come, not surprisingly, from the Escort Cosworth, this one driven by Renaud Verreydt. Starting at number 5 was Paul Lietaer, and he was another driver expected to be a major thorn in the side of Sniers. Lietaer chose the wrong tyres for one of the stages, and that cost him 18 seconds. Despite this, the car was going well. As ever, the Lancia Delta was going well in the hands of Dominique Bruyneel, while the little Mazda 323, driven by Gaby Goudezeune, was a little breathless against some of the quicker cars. The familiar shape of a Sierra Cosworth was in the hands of Jean-Manuel, while the Mitsubishi Lancia in Group N was once again driven by Nicolas Min. Min was determined to take victory in the showroom specification Group N category and set some very rapid times on the opening stages. The Group N battle would be between him and Millison for much of the event. They'd be caught, though, soon into it by the Escort Cosworth, driven by this man, Chris van Vernzel. The left-hand drive Escort was being driven very rapidly indeed, and was rapidly closing on the Sierra and on the Mitsubishi. Further down the Group N contest was Jimmy Olivier. As teammate of Paul Lietaer, but in a different specification of car, there was a lot of attention surrounding him. Up front, Sniers still led, still coping with the very slippery roads, however. As he tried to pull away from the opposition, he found that Paul Lietaer was getting ever closer behind him. Despite moments like that, Lietaer was on intermediate tyres, which he wasn't convinced were the right choice. The Renault Clio Williams, running in Formula 2, was driven by Bernard Munster. He was having his own problems of one sort or another, but he was 2 seconds behind Freddy Loix in the Formula 2 section. The second day of the event dawned with snow covering the roads, and that made things even more slippery for the drivers. Sniers had 2 problems. The first was how to consolidate that lead. The second was which tyres to put on. He was hoping that things would dry out as the day wore on, but still the roads were very treacherous indeed. He was the first man on them, chased as ever by the crack-back Escort of Paul Lietaer. Lietaer was revelling in these conditions and soon closed the gap between himself and Sniers, the leader. Renaud Verreydt was going well in his Escort. He was up into 3rd place and trying to close the gap on the 2 leaders. Freddy Loix with the Opel Astra Formula 2 car was leading his particular battle with Bernard Munster. As the weather got worse, he started to pull clear. Munster driving the Renault in determined fashion, but unable to close the gap. Group N was being led by the Sierra of Jean-Manuel, although he was being caught by both the Escort of Chris van Vernzel and Nicolas Min with the Mitsubishi. The interloper in the Group N battle now, though, was Jimmy Olivier with his Escort Cosworth, and he started to close on the rest of the opposition. Freddy Loix spun off at the harass stage, and that cost him between 25 and 30 seconds. Poor reward for all his fine efforts early on in the event. Dominique Bruyneel was still going as rapidly as ever with the Lancia, but didn't have the pace to match the Escort Cosworth at the head of the field. He was involved, though, in his own little battle with Renaud Verreydt, who was trying to close on second-place man Paul Lietaer. With Sniers' retirement, Lietaer it was who came through to take victory here on the Hautes Fagnes rally in Belgium. The Escort Cosworth driver was understandably delighted with his victory and had proved to the world that Patrick Sniers wasn't invincible after all. A look at the result showed victory for Paul Lietaer, with Renaud Verreydt taking second place and Dominique Bruyneel's Lancia in third. Freddy Loix took Formula 2 honours in fourth place. Gaby Goudezeune was fifth, here on the Hautes Fagnes rally. A delighted Lietaer sprays the champagne after his triumph. The Ford Escort, the victor's car, and Lietaer, a delighted driver.